This is such a trippy filter. I think it's new. Hope you guys had a great Valentine's Day with your significant other. I want to share a bit about Buddhist texts in the Karma Kagyu tradition. These days, I don't know why in the algorithm, I get videos recommended to me, and somehow I also stumble upon like palm leaf manuscripts. There was Cambridge University's video on one of the oldest Buddhist manuscripts in palm leaf form. And then there's this Canadian woman sharing her experiences with like destiny reading, because some palm leaves do contain some people's destinies. I've heard about it before, but YouTube brought me to the visual side of it. And yeah, they are really difficult to manage. And here is a brief history on how they were transferred from these palm leaves into what we have nowadays as woodblock prints. So in my previous episode from Dr. Sam Van Skyek, he talked a bit about woodblock printing in his book and how it is preserved today in Durgay County, Sichuan province, in People's Republic of China, aka Greater Tibet, depending on which side you are on. This is page 102 from this book, History of the Karmapas, Liturgies and the Buddhist Canon. The Karma Kagyu lineage was known as the practice lineage because of its emphasis on the practice of meditation. The six Karmapas' predecessors had not attached much importance to the outer aspects of practice and rituals. Their commentaries focused mainly on meditation or philosophy, and therefore Karma Kagyu monasteries often borrowed liturgical texts and music for their rituals from other lineages. This is from the 15th century. So before the 15th century, the Karma Kagyu tradition did not have that much focus on rituals, and then it changed. Songhua Dongden set out to establish a solid and homogeneous liturgical base for the monks and practitioners of the Karma Kagyu lineage. He composed a number of rituals and sadhanas and distributed these texts to each monastery and hermitage. In addition, he composed new rhythms for ritual chants and new melodies for traditional instruments, such as cymbals, oboes, horns, and so forth, and he introduced a new style of cham, sacred Lama dances dedicated to Mahakala, Jai Mahakal. He also wrote several texts, including one explaining the liturgy and gestures of the officiants and another about the preliminary practices in general, and those of Vajra Yogini and Chakra Samvara in particular, as these are of foremost importance in the Kagyu tradition. Some of his writings were influenced by a vision he had of Mahakala and Palden Lamo, who transmitted some specific teachings to him while he was on a trip. Thanks to the support of his many benefactors, the Karmapa was able to reproduce and distribute a large number of sacred texts to many monasteries. He carefully supervised the recopying of texts such as the Buddhist canon, which is composed of the Kangyur, Buddha's teaching, and the Tengyur, both lengthy compilations.
All these are scanned and documented here, Natang, Kangyur, and Tengyur. Then we have this Chinese. This is Peking Tengyur. Peking in the 18th century, 724 to 1736. During that time, they have actually made the print. And then Derge. This is one of the famous one now. Derge Tengyur, like Sidhu. The editor of that, this Derge Tengyur is and the one of the Sidhus of that time in the 18th century, When we compare on the collate these different versions of the different editions of the Kangyur and Tengyur, this Dege Tengyur is Dege Tengyur has used we find it more like refined in the sense of Tibetan language and in the sense of, but in Northern and other, they still use some of the words in the old way of Tibetan.
All these texts were originally from India and written in Sanskrit, and the first arrived in Tibet sometime during the 7th century. Initially, these were written on palm fronds, and much later paper was used, keeping the initial format of about 50 centimeters long by 7 centimeters wide. These texts, composed of long movable sheets, are not bound. Instead, even today, they are stacked one upon another, sometimes pressed between two boards and protected in a piece of finely worked cloth. To be accessible to the monks, they are generally placed on shelves surrounding the principal altar and maintained and replaced as necessary. To this body of text, one must add about 200,000 commentaries, liturgical texts, mystical chants, and so forth that represent the entirety of sacred Tibetan literature that was written by Tibetans themselves. It was during the 15th century that the tedious transcription methods were gradually replaced with woodblock printing. But it was not until the 17th century that woodblock printing was established in all the printing houses. Each page was then carved letter by letter, backward and in relief, on long, narrow blocks of wood, which permitted the printing of thousands of pages. This process thus favored large-scale diffusion of the texts in all the provinces of Tibet. The great monasteries, such as Tsurphu, possessed their own printing houses, but only a few were capable of printing the canon. Nonetheless, Tibetans have never stopped copying texts by hand. A number of commentaries or chants were never carved on woodblocks and exist only as handwritten manuscripts. Hundreds of precious volumes were even written with gold letters on black paper. The great encampment of the Karmapa. The 6th Karmapa journeyed through all of Tibet, visiting monasteries and bestowing blessings and teachings on the population. Traveling through Tibet was not without risks, however, as bandits did not hesitate to attack small defenseless groups, so pilgrims, traders, nomads, and monks took care to group together in large caravans to fend off the inevitable band of pillagers. The Karmapa's journeys required substantial organization, since he frequently left for months or even years at a time, and he traveled with his imposing monastic camp, Karmai Garchen, literally the great encampment of the Karmapa. As you guys know, I am a great fan of Garchen Rinpoche, and he initiated me in a lot of practices, so I'm super grateful that now I know where Garchen comes from. This is page 104. Also known as the Great Encampment that Adorns the World. The Karmai Garchen was instituted by the 4th Karmapa and would last until the 10th Karmapa, who witnessed its final destruction by the Mongols. The camp functioned with precision. It could be set up or dismantled quickly, each person knowing exactly his or her role. There were about 500 monks and hundreds of tents set up in either concentric circles or squares around the most imposing of the tents, that of the Karmapa. His tent, visible from afar with its many colorful banners and made sometimes completely of velvet, was enhanced with a number of brocades and hangings, often marine blue. It was divided into numerous rooms: the private room, a large chapel with a throne covered with silk and rich brocades that was used to conduct the black crown ceremony and bestow teachings, a little private chapel, and a room for the relics. Here we have a watercolor painting. The 6th Karmapa visits a monastery in the mountains of Tibet. Each room was decorated with tankas, canopies, and brocades of different dimensions and colors. In his private apartments, The master was surrounded by his attendants who were responsible for tending to every detail of his daily life. A large number of unburdened horses and yaks grazed and rested near the tents, which in summer were made of white cotton that allowed for better relief from the heat, and in winter of tightly braided yak felt that offered protection from the harsh cold. Although the conditions were not those of a traditional monastery, the camp followed the same monastic discipline as Tsurfu. The Karmapas insisted on unwavering respect of the Vinaya, the rules that govern the life of a monk. 30 full-time disciplinarians would ensure that the discipline was carefully respected. Many monks were lodged in each tent, and one tent was dedicated to rituals. Advanced meditation practitioners were often lodged alone, and occasionally the Karmapa visited them when they needed guidance. The camp was completely vegetarian, as eating meat or even bringing meat to the camp was strictly forbidden. The encampment earned the epithet of the Buddha Dharma of white soup. The Buddha Dharma of white soup. Nice. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys have a great rest of the week.